In this video, I'm going to show you how to fabricate a complicated part using basic tools. We're going to try and fabricate this support strut here. Now, on most Mercedes, in fact, all the Mercedes I've seen, especially the older ones, this is almost always rusted out. And what happens is this support arch here, here's an example, basically rusts from the top because the drain holes have been blocked, and then this starts filling with water and starts rusting through, and then that causes this section to rust. This is a hollow section, water sits inside there and it rusts, and it will cause ingress into your front footwells and all sorts of other problems. So in this video I'm going to show you how to make up this piece here. The basic tools that we're going to be using is this section of I-beam, which we picked up for a couple of quid off eBay, a nice lump hammer, a couple of sets of mole grips, a DeWalt battery operated angle grinder just with a grinding disc, and also a cut-off disc. And we'll be using these super strong neodymium magnets as well. I hardly got the strength to pull that off. These are really good for holding panels in place. We'll be covering those in a later video. Clark welder from Machine Mart, which my dad gave me, and the EcoFlow Delta battery pack, which has been absolutely fantastic running that welder, and a couple of the other power tools that we use from time to time. This is the front cowl of a Mercedes 107, and the bit we're trying to rebuild is this section here. But unfortunately there are no good photographs showing what that piece should look like. You used to be able to get that reinforcement section separately, that's this here, but it's no longer available. You can see from here is where the two drain holes should be, right at the lower end of that section, so the inner wheel arch repair section is going to sit above that hole, but unfortunately that's the best we've got to go on. Often when people repair the sills on those 107 SLs, they buy a sill cover section like this. This costs about £79 for one side. You might occasionally get offcuts that people haven't used, and most people just use the end sections to repair the front and the rear sills, and the centre section is never used. But this is perfect for our purposes because the thickness is right, and secondly that this curve here is almost exactly the curve that we need, see, to fit in that inner wheel arch section. Okay, so we're just going to weld two bits together, start off with. Our task is to try and get that little curve in there. The way I'm going to do it is to clamp this piece of metal between these two I-beams. I've made a little cut on the other side to help it along, and I'm just going to tap that down. That, my friend, is pretty darn good. So we're getting closer to making up this piece. This is just a template that we need to try and make. And what I'm using once again is the lip that already exists on this sill, and we're using the angle just to cut, to knock that into a right angle. It's not the right angle at the moment, but we just move it along there and move it to the right angle. I'm just measuring everything many times, cutting once. So we're hoping to be able to use the lip on this side here it's actually going to go into the front footwell. So we're going to cut this triangle out here, and I can see that I've already made a small schoolboy error, because when we bend that round, we should have made this longer, because when we bend it round it's only going to come to there and it's going to be short, that lip. Never mind, we can probably just weld a piece in. So we're going to cut that out, bend that round and weld that together there. That's the plan. We've cut that triangle out. In theory, all we have to do now is tap that down. Okay, so now that's that lip there, so we will weld that later. So the next thing we have to do is just address this issue here and lay this piece here in. Okay, we've made the most complicated piece, and now we just got to weld this on top of there. And what I'm doing to hold it upright is just using these super strong neodymium magnets. These are a 50 kilogram pull magnet, and you don't want to put your hand between that and the metal, but that will help us to hold this upright right on the edge without any clamps. Those magnets have got, as I say, a 50 kilogram pull. They don't affect the welding too much. We're just going to put a couple of tacks in to help hold it in place, and then we can get rid of that magnet. So the idea is, this is just all test fitted with these neodymium magnets. This is a pretty good fit here, and we'll either use panel bond to glue that on there, or we'll spot weld it. Haven't decided yet. This is the bit we're making, which is quite a complicated section. You can see that this is a really nice tight fit to that curve, which is good. We're going to just be welding that in there. And this lip on here, which would have been very difficult to actually bend over like that, but we use the natural curves of the bit of sill. This will give us the somewhere to actually, when we replace this pan here, somewhere to actually weld to. And on the inside here, what we need to do now is just finish off a piece that basically just goes from there down to that corner there. So we'll probably just make that out of cardboard first, and then make a little template up, and then all we have to do is just get a flat piece across here, because this is basically where the battery will sit on top here. This would be one flat piece here that we'll lay in. If you're going to do any fabrication on your car, getting a little section of I-beam like this is just perfect, because you get a working height, so you're not doing your back in, and then you've got all sorts of different places that you can clamp onto as well. This support strut is starting to take shape now. We've just got to make a piece to fit in here now, and the piece is going to look something like this. Okay, we're going to use this piece of metal here, and we're going to cut that to size, weld it across there. Once again, we're using the slight curvature there to make that fit perfectly on top of there, like so. Now this section of this support strut is actually hidden underneath here, if you can imagine that. That goes on there like so. So you won't actually see this section. It doesn't have to be perfect, but we'll make it as good as we can. I've learned from experience that trying to cut exact pieces of metal and then bending them around, they tend to lengthen or shorten. So I'm going to cut across there, give us a much bigger piece than we need, and then we'll see what we've got to work with. Once again, using our trusty magnets to hold the whole thing together, you can see that we're going to have to bend this round to there. So here's the plan. We're just going to trim that off to the right length, and then this is just drawing around a felt tip pen. We're going to go really wide, because I suspect when we bend that in and try and twist and bend it at the same time, it's going to want to lengthen. So let's have a go at doing that. So that was our first little bend there. Now we're going to just clamp it here and try and bend that bit round, and then we can just trim off any excess or grind off any excess. Okay, we're getting there. We just need to bend that end down a little bit and then trim off the excess, weld it in, and that should be job done. Just taped off the bits that we need to trim off. Sometimes it's easier doing that with masking tape rather than felt tip pen. It's easier to see. Okay, so that's a piece in. We're just going to sand off all the old paint, weld that in. We've got that securely clamped in place. We're just going to tack weld it here and on the end and in the middle, and then we can carry on welding that together. This is relatively thick steel we're welding together, so I've got my wire speed at 6, I've got wire feed at 3, and that's it. That seems to work quite well. Obviously the gas is on as well, that's just carbon dioxide gas. Next we're just going to do a little section in here like so, and that is going to have a lip going up like that. We're just going to use this offcut that's already got a right angle, and then here is all going to be flat. So basically we can't have a lip going up, we either have to have a lip going down or no lip at all. We've just done the next piece of our giant jigsaw puzzle. I welded this little section on in situ to make sure it was in exactly the right place, so that this basically fits perfectly to where we need it to fit. And the next up and the final bit is just going to be doing this last little section here, almost the last piece of this jigsaw puzzle. We're going to weld that in there. So this is our final test fit. This panel that we've made up, or strut that we've made up, fits perfectly to this section here. It'll fit perfectly to the new floor pan that we're putting in. There will be some leeway with that because it'll be thinner metal. Fits almost perfectly there. We might have to bash that a few times with a hammer. And this here, curve here, will fit perfectly with the curve on this section here. Now, this is not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but let me just show you something. This is the other side of the car, and this looks like my 8-year-old daughter put this on in a paper mache class. There's big holes here, there's gaps at the end here, so although what we fabricated is not by any means perfect, it is an awful lot better than it was, and it's also an awful lot better than the supposed professionals who did this. This is the Red 280 SL, our next project that we're going to start, and somebody's actually spent a lot of time and energy putting panels in, but once again you can see this is not perfect. So I'm pretty pleased with what we've managed to achieve with basic tools. One last car, this is also the Red 280 SL, the one that's completed. We never did any of the welding on here, but you can see that this should have a rubber bung in there. Somebody's obviously just painted over that, but we should put that in on our car. But this has also been heavily repaired here, not done properly. There's no overlap there, so we'll try and get our repairs OEM as we possibly can. We finished making up this piece, and you can see that this is a complicated piece. It's got a curve there, it's got another curve there, it's got opposing lips, it's got this curve in there and different lips at the end. I've never fabricated anything like that in my life before, and if I can do it, I'm sure anybody else can do it just using the simple basic tools that I've described and a piece of old cut-off sill. What we will be doing is using etch primer or epoxy primer to treat the inside of this, because so often these parts rust from the inside out, and then we'll be eventually putting that on the car. But before we weld that to the car, we've got to address one or two other issues which I'll be covering in a separate video. And the last thing I'd say, that if you took that to a body shop or mechanic to fix, they would never take the time to make up a piece like that. So my advice is just have a go yourself. All you need is the confidence to give it a go, and if you're working on your own car, you'll be amazed at what good results you can get if you take a little bit of time. These neodymium magnets we got from these guys on eBay. If you buy 10 of them, they're about £4.40 each. You can just buy one of them, or just less quantity, but they're significantly more expensive, £10. Those magnets are absolutely fantastic for a whole variety of purposes, especially in one of our forthcoming videos where we'll be bonding metal panels together using the 3M panel bond as opposed to welding. We got our cutting discs from Toolstation. There's a huge variety to choose from, but the ones that we use are the extra thin ones, 0.8mm thick, because they tend to be easier for doing curves and they remove less material. Obviously they don't last quite as long. £6.98 for 5. Once again, there's a huge variety of grinding discs. We're just using these Norton metal grinding discs, £1.75 each, and that's lasted us since we began our project, so that's pretty good.